Just quickly for those of you who are just coming in, how to work with the webinar. You should be seeing a introductory PowerPoint slide with a cover of our forensic textbook. And then if you mouse over the bottom of the window with the Zoom meeting, there's a menu there. And there are two buttons that you might want to use. One is a chat button. So if you have questions or you're having any technical difficulties, feel free to use that to communicate either with the entire group or with the panelists or myself. And there's also a Q&A button. So if you have questions you want to answer, we'll have time at the end for questions. But if you have questions as the webinar is going on, feel free to use that. And I'm also very proud to announce that this is the official launch of the 3rd edition of our forensic science textbook. I don't know, Barb, how many months ago did we envision doing this thing now?
A year.
So for the last year, Barb and our team here at Kendall Hunt has been working on putting this together, and we're very proud of it and thrilled to introduce it to you today. So with that, I'd like to introduce our presenter. She is our author, Barbara Ball. I'm not going to say how many years, Barb, you've been teaching because those aren't the kind of things you're allowed to talk about. But Barb's a career science teacher, been teaching forensics, and been an expert in this area for, let's just say, a sufficiently long time.
Yeah.
Is that a good enough answer?
Sure. So yeah, 20+ years. Yeah.
And so what we're going to do today, she's going to talk a bit about some of the new things we've done in the book, as well as going over sort of the fundamentally how her book approaches forensics education. And then when she's done, we're going to be excited to show you a couple new partnerships that we have launched to supply some great and phenomenal interactive digital tools to go with the program through a new partnership that we have here at Kendall Hunt. So with that said, Barb, it is all yours.
Okay, well, hello everybody, and thank you for coming. We have a new 3rd edition, and a lot has changed since the last edition because it's been a while. So what's new? One of the big things that's new is a new chapter on cybercrime. The reason we decided on this is because, according to James Clapper, Director of National Intelligence, he says that cyber threats to the U.S. national and economic security are increasing in frequency, scale, sophistication, and severity of impact. Cybersecurity has become the top priority facing U.S. security, replacing terrorism even. So it's a big deal. Everybody knows about it. Everybody talks about it. There's even a new TV show on called CSI Cyber, which is interesting. But anyway, that's chapter 17 on cybercrime. What is cybercrime? Cybercrime can be defined as the commission of a crime using a computer and a network. 2 categories. One could be using the computer itself to commit a crime, and one, the computer as a target of a crime. So what the students are going to be able to understand from this chapter are the impact of cybercrime on the global economy, how it affects everybody, and how much money really is involved in cyber world and cybercrime and so on and so forth, and how it affects countries and individuals. We're looking at who is targeted for cybercrime, who are the victims. Of course, we have to go over the language of cybercrime. What are bots, black hats, white hats, denial of service, farming, phishing, malware, spyware, worms, viruses, catfishing, webjacking, all new words that didn't exist in my language a while ago, at least a decade ago. I don't think I knew what any of these were. So students will be understanding types of cybercrimes, and there are as many different types of cybercrimes as there are ideas in a person's head. But some basic ones that are very common, in fact, probably most common, is identity theft and financial theft, that kind of thing. Also money laundering, terrorism and how terrorists use the internet, transmission of illegal goods and services, intellectual property theft. We talk about all those kinds. And we talk about how the computer and internet forensics can be used to solve crimes. Again, the computer can be used as a source of evidence. actually getting into how to get in the inside of a computer and hacking and tearing apart the insides of a computer is pretty sophisticated stuff and takes some pretty sophisticated software and hardware. So we don't get into that. That's not available to the public. But we talk about how this computer can be used as a source of evidence and how to follow those procedures, and how the internet can be used in crimes, internet forensics using IP addresses and so on. Also discuss how to protect yourself from cybercrime, like encryption, security settings, passwords, attachments, posting, being careful about posting information that's personal. Students, at the end of the chapter, when they're done, they should be able to explain how cybercrime affects everyone. They should be able to identify major security breaches and explain how they affect business. By the time you teach this chapter, there probably will be many more. They should be able to explain what intellectual property is and piracy and stealing ideas and stealing things from the internet. And they should be able to list steps in investigating computer crime. They should be able to identify ways that hackers can gain entry into your personal network. They're asked to design a public service video on the safeguards against cybercrime, and it can characterize IP addresses as public or private and how to follow those addresses when they're tracking internet crimes. So that's overview of the chapter. I'm going to be talking more about case studies, so I just threw this one up here. The second one, case study that is in there is a 2013, a Michigan man travels to California intending to kill a woman and her boyfriend for involving him in a catfish scheme. But come to find out, the man and the woman actually is a high school girl who has posted pictures of herself online. Some guy in South Africa has hacked into her accounts, stolen her information and her pictures, and he's using them to enter a relationship with this Michigan man. And so I kind of had to put that one in there because that was a high school girl posting too much information online. And let's see where that goes. What else is new? We have information on federal labs like the FBI, DEA, and especially the Department of Homeland Security, which didn't exist 10 years ago, I don't think. I guess it's been 10 years now. Didn't exist 15 years ago like it is now. There's a biometrics section now, which talks about new ways for individual identification, things that are coming about that are new, like facial recognition, facial geometry, hand geometry, iris and retina scans. These are all used now for identifying individuals for security or other reasons. Of course, all the tables, charts, and graphs have been updated. There's a little bit on art forgery. I talked about the cybercrime chapter. Also in the cybercrime chapter, I've asked the students to do things using technical tools, like they're asked to produce a digital story on a current online or a current security breach. They're asked to create a podcast on how hackers can gain access to your personal network. They're asked to make a digital poster, to create an online survey on cybercrime, and again, to produce a public service video. And I've added 12 new cases. And I'm going to talk a little bit now about cases, and because our whole program is about, oops, I lost my, here we go. Our whole approach is the inquiry approach. And so I want to talk about how you can use case studies to teach forensic science, because what case studies do is hopefully bring up questions. And you want to choose your case studies based on the questions that they bring up. Again, that's why forensic science is such a great way to teach inquiry, because of all these questions. Here we go again. Okay. What case studies in these questions to do? Again, questions like, What happened? How did they know? How did they do that? Is that right? Is that real? What could have been done differently? It can all lead students to create their own lab experiments. It can lead students to apply what they've learned in class. It can lead students to evaluate and discuss significance in writing or communication, oral communication. A lot of us have to do cross-curricular assignments now, and assignments with writing. So there's a good place for that too. Or it can lead to further research. Whatever kids are interested in, they're interested in the case studies. So it's a good way to start with the inquiry. Case studies are really easy to find. Right now, you can just Google, say, for instance, a fingerprint case with a case study with fingerprint evidence, or a case study with fiber evidence. You Google them, there's lots of them out there. Easy to find. But then you have to sift through them, figure out what's right for your purpose, make sure that they do ask a lot of questions that your students will be able to answer. So easy to find, but pretty time consuming to have to go through and pick out what you need and rewrite them and set them up for your class to use. So with that being said, that's what we did with the third edition. We have over 34 case studies. There's at least 2 per chapter. A lot of the lessons start out with crime scenarios, which are a little different than the case studies. The case studies, where did they go? They look like this. And all of the case studies that look like this are real case studies, things that really happened. And the crime scenarios that we bring up, sometimes we'll just bring up a short little snippet of one thing or another that leads to questions or leads to students wanting to delve into it a little bit further. So I've done a lot of that for you. However, if there's a big news story or if there's a local crime story, that's interesting to them. Those of you that teach forensic science right now know that you have kids coming in all the time saying, I saw this on TV last night. Is this real? Guess what happened? Or how did they do this? Or they did something wrong. So use whatever your kids are interested in, whatever they're talking about already. Sometimes when you broach a subject, you find that they're especially interested in one thing over another. Go with what they're interested in. Focus on that. And for some examples, let me give you this case. This is the Amanda Davies case. This happened in the 90s. And for us in mid-Michigan, this was a local case where this high school girl, she's and her boyfriend, they break up. And she goes to Florida and has a lot of fun and has some pictures taken of her having a lot of fun in Florida. She comes home and she tells her parents that she's going to go out and she's going to hook up with her ex and show them the pictures and hopefully rekindle their relationship. Never to be seen or heard from again. A few days later, she was found underneath an overpass with a lot of knife wounds. And she, at the time, had been wearing this blue-gray acrylic sweater. And they found on that 40 yellow polyester fibers. So the boyfriend ends up being the prime suspect, as often is the case. And they go and they question him and do an inquiry. And as they're examining his truck, they find this yellow blanket in his truck. And on the yellow blanket, there are 30 blue-gray acrylic fibers, just like the sweater. And so then their case is, and actually I talked to some of the police and some of the investigators involved in this, and they were sure that they had their man. They were positive. Couldn't be anyone else. They never had any other suspects. They knew it was him. So the prosecution goes in and says that with all this fiber transfer, that's proof that a violent encounter took place. But the defense says, how do you know that the fibers transferred indicated a primary transfer? Maybe she got it from another occasion when she was in his truck. And he actually admitted that she had been in his truck on that night. Now the question is, and the question what you want to ask your kids is, say say for instance, you're wearing a sweater right now. You go home, you sit on a fuzzy blanket, stand up. Are fibers from the blanket going to be on you? And fibers from your sweater going to be on the blanket? How many? How would you test that? So they're asked to design their own experiment, and I have, at this point in chapter 6 in fibers, they've gone through a lot of fiber and fabric tests, so they have a lot of fabric samples. And they're asked, this leads them to design an experiment that leads to fiber transfer and persistence. How easily do they transfer? How long do they stay there? Is 30 to 40 fibers a large number, or isn't it? Well, the prosecution had not had that tested. The guy was found not guilty. So what could have been done differently? Leads to a lab, and they can come up with their own kind of procedure for that. Another example for creating experiments, I think I put this first because this is my favorite, when I can ask a question that then leads students to do some kind of experimentation. This is in chapter 10 in Glass and Soil, and the Amanda Knox case, which is actually introduced in earlier chapters, but we come back to it in chapter 10 just to look at the glass evidence. Because there was one part of this where crime scene experts said that the burglary looked like it had been staged, that no one had entered the bedroom where the window had been broken. The glass shards were found in the room that indicated a rock had been thrown from inside the room. So the question is, how can they tell that it came from inside the room and not outside the room? Design an experiment. And let me just say this, for those of you that want to design experiments or have experiments in your class, a good resource is your local glass repair shop. They have lots of scrap glass. You can imagine what kind of experiments students would design with different glass samples. Personally, I didn't bring in rocks and glass for them. What I did was I took my own, I had sheets of plexiglass that I shot with a 22, and then I laid these samples around on the lab tables with labels on them for the entrance side and the exit side. I also collected, I call it fight glass, where in our school the doors have this metal webbing woven in the glass, and when kids bump into it for one reason or other, the glass all stays intact with this webbing, but you can see the fracture patterns. So I would ask the custodian to please bring me those when that would happen, and then I would tape them up with packing tape, clear packing tape, and then again label impact side. This is a little photograph here because when you look at the edge of the glass, the fracture patterns are different. So when you have these all laid out on your lab tables, they can look at the different fracture patterns, look at the different impact points, and then draw their own conclusions from that. Application of knowledge. This is in the chapter on drugs, and this is a case from 2014 where these two brothers got 52 years for selling incense. They were selling incense over the internet. Incense or spice, they sometimes called it. They were in Indiana. And this is in chapter 7, but we want to go back after we've read the case. We can go back to chapter 1 and ask questions like, why were the charges filed in a federal court instead of an Indiana court? Ask what are the laws regarding synthetic drugs, and how does this relate to the Daubert ruling, which they had learned about in the beginning, I think chapter 1 or 2, when they were talking about evidence. And the question is, what evidence is accepted in a court of law and what evidence is not? Well, before the 80s, it was pretty easy. The only standard was, is it accepted scientific knowledge? If it was, they accepted it. If it wasn't, they didn't. But so many new things are coming around so fast. I mean, these guys came up with this synthetic cannabinoid ingredient. It's not against the law yet because it hadn't existed yet. It had never existed. So how does that relate to the Daubert ruling and evidence? What evidence is accepted in a court of law? Application, another application. We have Christopher Vaughn. 2007. This is one where this guy is going to take his family on vacation. He's got his wife, his 3 kids in the back seat. They're going to go to a water park in Illinois. But instead of taking the main freeways, he's taking some kind of back roads and side roads. And at one point, he gets out of his car and he goes to secure the luggage up on top. He gets back in and he says, when he got back in, his wife, Kimberly, began firing a handgun. And he runs away and she shoots him in the leg. And when he comes back, his wife and his children are all dead. So he goes and he flags down a passerby and they call 911. Now this is an application case study where you have to figure out if his story made sense. As you think about it, first of all, he's shot running away, but his blood is found on the center console, on the side of his wife's shorts, on the carpet between her shoes, and on both sides of her seatbelt. Her blood is found on the center console. They have a blood expert who says that it was disturbed in the minute or so after it fell, but before it began to congeal. You also find window glass on top of bullet casings. So what does that tell you about the order of things that have happened? And the question is, how did the testimony of the blood expert show that his story couldn't be true? What's the significance of the glass shards on top of the bullet casings? What does that mean? So again, application of knowledge. Do I have questions here? No. Okay. Okay. This is a great one. This is actually chapter 3, crime scene, after they have looked at how to process the crime scene and how to process evidence and collect it and so on and so forth. This is a good one for evaluate and discuss how the case was resolved. What could have been differently? What went wrong? What went right? If you look at this Amanda Knox case and the murder of Meredith Kirchner, both she and her boyfriend were tried together 4 times. If you just look at this right here, just look at this slide right here, what questions does this bring up? What does this tell you? First of all, they're guilty, then not guilty, then guilty, then not guilty. What questions does that bring up? First of all, why are there 4 trials? And second of all, what went wrong? Obviously something went wrong because it keeps going on and on. And this is just some of the evidence here that was found at the trial, and they can talk about any of these aspects of the case. For instance, the one that says bloody footprints found in the room, in Knox's room, and in the hallway contained Knox's DNA, and one footprint contained both hers and Meredith's DNA. What's the significance of that evidence? Knox lived there. Would you expect her DNA to be there in her house? Of course. The question is, did the DNA come from the blood in the footprint or from the carpet that the footprint was on? Blood and bodily fluid kept in packages and packaged in plastic bags. At this time, students know what happens when you put wet items in a plastic bag and then let it sit for weeks or months or years. What happens? So they know that it shouldn't be placed in plastic bags. They also found a photograph of the crime scene where one item was found in a different place in another photograph. So there's a lot of evidence that they can look at and evaluate. And again, look at what went wrong, what went right. A few things went right. What would they have done differently? How could it have been done differently?
Hey, Barb, before you go on, we got a quick question here. Someone's asking about the geography of the case studies. If most of them are centered around, the question says the tri-state area. I'm not sure what tri-states we're talking about, or if just your examples seem to be geographically centered.
Well, this one's in Italy. So, and no, they're not, geography doesn't have anything to do with any of them. Although I got the Amanda Davies case, the first one that I talked about, because that was local. And I do have another one in the book that was local of a bank robber, just things that I'd heard of, but geographically, no. They're all over. Yeah.
Okay.
And this next one actually was, I picked this one for today for further research, the Alexander Litvinenko case, because this was in the news again in the last week or two. This happened in London. This Litvinenko, he's a former agent, Russian agent. He goes and he meets two former KGB operatives for a cup of tea in a London hotel. 3 weeks later, he's dead in a hospital of acute radiation poisoning. And if you follow what happened with these two former KGB operatives and where they are now and what happened to them, there's a lot of intrigue and a lot going on. One of them ended up in some other kind of strange circumstances, and other people around him ended up dead. Another one ended up in the Russian equivalents of parliament. But Britain did an inquest in 2014 to see what happened and by whom and so on and so forth. They've been trying. It also gets into extradition issues, but this British inquest finally came out with their report in the middle of January, just a couple of weeks ago. So a good question would be, what did they end up with? And in the news, it talked a bit about Putin and what he had to do with it. But again, this is something that could lead to further research in a cross-curricular interdisciplinary lesson. A lot of physics application here. What type of radiation does polonium give off? How does it affect the body? Use this in biology, anatomy, physiology. What could have been the source of it? Again, physics, maybe civics, social studies, something like that. It can lead to a lot of different questions and a lot of different further research. So the case studies, as someone was asking, there in all different areas. Most of them, I got rid of some of the older ones and tried to introduce newer ones. And they're all different places in the chapter, because some of them lead students to begin to look at labs and ways to answer the questions. Some of them, they need to know information before they can answer the questions. Some of them lead to further research. So they're interspersed all throughout the chapter. And like I said, there's 32 of them in there. So pick and choose. And also, we encourage you to use your own. Kids like to hear about what's going on around them. So if you use your own, that's a good way to do it too.
Well, and look, a perfect segue, because we have a couple questions before we go on to Flourish. The first question here from Maria is, the background information provided in the case study, i.e., or is it a web link in the text? How do we provide that background information for the case study?
The case studies look like this on the bottom here. They're in the book, and the background information is in the case study. Oh, there's another one there. This is just one. Sometimes they're short, they're a half page, sometimes they're a page, sometimes they're 2 or 3 pages long, it depends. But the information is in the story, so they should be able to come to their own conclusions based on what they're reading here in the book. Although I hope that some of them are interested enough to do further research on them too. So.
And the second question, speaking of research, from Janet, she's asking, for information on the cases you're speaking of, did you use other sources for research other than internet searches?
Most information I got from the web, yeah. But a lot of these, they give a lot of sources, a lot of newspapers. I get information from a lot of newspapers and a lot of news sources. And yeah, you have to watch and make sure that you have good sources. Just like you want to teach kids.
And feel free, I think, are you segueing over to me, Barb? Did I just sort of step on your segue?
Yeah, if anybody had any other questions or comments.
And feel free to continue if you have questions for Barb. I'm going to take a second, and I'd like to just show you the digital tools that we've created to go with the program, and to talk about our new partnership now that I know that John is on the line. But feel free, and we'll go back to Barb here and any questions that come up. Oh, here we go, before I get started. The question is, are there studies related to anthropology in the program?
Yes, we have, one of them is the case at El Mazote, and it's about a mass murder and trying to identify bodies and skeletons, and trying to see if they can piece together from where they are, where they're lying, and how they're lying, if they can piece together the story of what had happened, and in identification. There's also a case in there on facial recognition, where they found a young girl, and by using a facial recognition program, put markers on her, decided what she would look like today, and then found out who she was from there. So yeah, there's a few of them in that case, in that section also. Every chapter has some.
Alrighty, so the new forensic science program does come with a full suite of digital tools. Here is we use Flourish as the name of our learning management system. So I just want to show you a couple brief things. We do have, so the book is a traditional print book. Here I can, just because I can, show you here we go. Print book, cover, yay, Vanna White. And then it also comes as a full ebook. And I'll click here. Actually, I don't have to click. So we talked about the activities. So this is the full ebook. Everything that's in the print book is also in the ebook, both the student and the teacher version. So in the teacher edition, so if there are teacher notes, teachers can easily access those to help with the facilitation of the activity. The book comes with the ability for students to take notes. They can bookmark things for future reference. So it's a fully usable and interactive ebook. Vocabulary words, if you mouse on one, let's see, I picked a page. Let's see if I picked one that had was I smart enough to pick one with a vocabulary word on it? I was. So you mouse over a vocabulary word, the definition will pop up so students can easily access that information. As well as PowerPoints. So if you want to teach the class using PowerPoint, there's materials list, time charts. CAS is our assessment system that comes with the program. That's our interactive test generator that allows you to create assessments that can either be delivered via the printout or via the web. Students can take assessments online.
Let me connect. I'll butt in here on, just to mention,
please.
With the PowerPoints, you can edit them yourself. Having taught for so many years, it seems like every year I'd have to change one or two things in the PowerPoint. So know that you can edit those or change them or add to them yourself, put your own information in there as needed.
So the last thing I wanted to talk about is, and to introduce, is we, as part of developing the tools for this edition, about a year ago, we had the good fortune of meeting John Stevens from Bullfrog Communications, and he has developed a fully interactive tool. And John's online. I don't know if he's going to talk and say hello, but I know he's there. I see your name, John. You can't hide.
Right. Can you hear me okay?
We can, sir.
Beautiful.
So we met John about a year ago and was introduced to his tool that I'm going to show you here real quick, called Murder at Oldfield. And it's a fully interactive web-based murder based on a true double murder that happened back in 1842. And with your purchase of forensics, all teachers and students will also get a subscription to Murder at Oldfield and have access to this activity. Is the ebook, I'm going to get to your question, Maria. So you'll have access to Murder at Oldfield that will come with your purchase of forensics. We're incredibly excited to make that a part of the program and to be able to take advantage of the phenomenal resource and all the work that John and his team have put into doing this. And I'm going to try to log in real quick and give you at least a brief look. And we'll give you the link to Murder at Oldfield so that you can take a look at it for yourself. But it starts, here's our crime scene where the crime occurs. Students can then interact with the crime scene and collect evidence. You can see we can navigate our way into the house here. And John promised to correct me if I do anything wrong. And
Yes.
we can pull out our magnifying glass. And then you'll see here, did I get it?
Yep.
And it's supposed to turn green. I don't know why it didn't turn green.
I think because I already
Oh, because I collected it already. That's it. There you go. So if I hadn't collected the footprints already, the magnifying glass would turn green to let the student know that, oh, here's a piece of evidence. And then they can take a photograph or collect a blood sample depending on the type of evidence. And then once they have it collected, we can go into the evidence into the lab. And here we'll go to footprints. And here's my footprint near the front porch. And now I can look at my different suspects and match the footprints. Once I collect that evidence, reach my conclusions in the lab, I can keep that in a portfolio and collect my evidence to solve the case. With the program, so you're going to get access to Murder at Oldfields for the length of your subscription to our books. You'll also have access to Murder at Oldfields. And now what am I forgetting to say? I'm sorry, I got a little distracted because I saw questions come up at the same time. See, this is why, Barb, I told you that I look at the questions so that you don't get distracted while you're talking.
I wanted to jump in and have you show them after they collect the evidence, before they go to the lab, they can go to their classroom.
Oh, sorry. Let me go. Yep.
Yeah. In the classroom, they have lessons.
Keep going. Where do you want me to click on? I'll let you drive me.
Oh, okay. Well, how about the lesson? Any of them, yeah. And the lesson that explains the lesson. In this case, it's the crime. You can scroll down through that. That gives them some background information. And then after they are familiar with that, keep going. All the way down. Then after they're finished reading through all of this, you can go back up to the top. There's a quiz. So, yep.
Oh,
back to the classroom. Oh, there you go. You got a quiz.
There's the quiz.
Somebody took it. So yeah, there's the lessons, the quizzes, the labs, and in the end, they have to come up with a good conclusion and collect the evidence.
So let me answer these questions real quick. Now there's a few of them. Is the ebook available to students or just the instruction? The ebook's available to everybody. The way we actually package the program, since obviously with Murder at Oldfield, as well as with the PowerPoints, the things we talked about, the entire curriculum doesn't exist in the print book. So the way we sell it is that you buy the digital curriculum for yourself or for your students. If you need a print book to go with it, then we charge an extra $10 to cover the cost of printing. So everyone gets the ebook. It's a standard part of the package. Can you access Murder at Oldfields without a text purchase? Yes, John runs his own business. If you go to murderadoldfields.com, you can get more information. You can also play with a demo yourself that allows you to go through a part of the house and collect some evidence and see what that experience is and look at the lessons for yourself. We also provide a link to that demo from our website, which I'll show you how to get to here in a second. The length of service for the ebook, the way we sell it is I don't know if anyone on the line is from a private school. We do sell one-year licenses that typically that's private schools where kids are buying their own book. They'll buy a digital license for a year so that students can do that. Typically for schools, it's a 6-year license. But if you need it to be longer from the beginning, we can negotiate that at the beginning. If you know that your book, you're going to have it for at least 10 years, we can make that work at the beginning when you do your initial purchase. Hey, John, since you're on the line, I'm going to let you take this next question. How long would it take a typical class to go through Murder at Oldfields?
Murder at Oldfields was created in a very flexible way. So there's a feature in Murder at Oldfields that's called the lesson plan. So there's a total of 7 lessons in the online version of Murder at Oldfields. So you're able to kind of turn on and off those lab activities depending upon how much time that you have. So, for example, I know how flexible teachers have to be when they're teaching this. Sometimes it's a standalone elective that they're teaching for, let's say, 2 weeks in the course of a semester. Other times, we've had teachers use it as a culminating activity at the end of the school year after they've already introduced forensics. And in other cases, teachers have used it to cover an entire semester. So I know that that might be an unsatisfactory answer, that I can't just say, oh, okay, you know, it's going to take you 2 weeks of classes, but it really does depend. I mean, it's from grades 7 to 12. So if you have some really high achieving 12th graders, they're going to zoom through this faster than you might in another case.
Go ahead, Barb.
If you'll go under the Murder at Old Fields and show the classroom, I think is what I want to look at.
Yeah, it might be the grade book. I think you're thinking of the grade book.
No, this is what I want. Here, another way you can do it is you could weave it throughout our whole class, because we have chapters on the crime. You could do the crime section after their first 3 chapters where they've looked at the crime scene and types of evidence and how to collect evidence. Do the hair analysis section after the chapter on hair analysis, the blood analysis with the blood chapter. We have chapter on all these things. We don't have a footprint impressions chapter, but we have a chapter of tool marks and impressions. So, and that it does deal with footprints. So you could use that section at that time. So you could kind of weave it in throughout your curriculum throughout the school year, where you might want to use this at the end of the lesson, or maybe even at the beginning.
And to help you with that, Barbara's written a implementation guide that comes on our Flourish page for where in the book, with each chapter of the book, what parts of Murder at Oldfields are a good tie-in. So that comes with the program as well to help make that integration as smooth as possible. I'm going to take a couple more questions here. The reason I had pulled up the grade book before was because the next question was, when students take the quiz on Murder at Oldfields, are the results available? And the answer is yes. John has a full grade book here integrated. So if I had a class built in, Barb's been playing with this. Barb, I have to say, your grades here are not so stellar. And then if I click, you can get detailed results in terms of the answer and how they did. Oh, she just didn't complete it. That's why you have a 32. Yeah. Okay. I'll give you a little credit. All right. So the answer is yes. John has a full grade book integrated. And the next question, Dan, you asked the question that you're making me as the publisher get a little awkward. So Barb, I'm going to let you take this one. His question is, what are the advantages of your book over the Saferstein book?
Well, this one we had experts check out the reading level. The reading level is different. So this is more of a 10 through 12. It's more interactive. As the students go through it, the labs, like I said, the labs and the cases are interwoven throughout. Instead of some of our competition, they have the information and then all the labs are at the end, or they have the information and all the case studies are at the end. We have things that are woven through. Also, ours uses that inquiry approach where you want to ask, how did that happen? One of the reasons, let me go back to the very beginning, one of the reasons we did have this curriculum in an inquiry-based way was because of national tests, state tests, SATs, ACTs, all your state tests, they all deal with looking at what went wrong, what went right, scientific literacy and scientific practices. And so ours takes that approach. And I think that's one of the biggest differences. Saferstein was adapted from college level. And we have more labs. We have a lot more labs, a lot more activities. And I have suggested activities, suggested lesson plans, suggested class discussions, and so on and so forth.
All right. I don't think, I'm trying to make sure I got to all the questions. I believe we have. put here on the screen. If so, like I said, murder@oldfields.com. If you want to go directly to look at John's tool and download, or not really download, I guess it's a web-based tool to play with the demo there. That's the place to go for that. And if you're interested in taking a look at the new forensics book and the demo of Murder at Oldfields together, I put an email address that'll get to your right salesperson. I know most of them are on the line right now, and a phone number to call, but honestly, you don't have to do anything. If you're registered for the webinar, you're going to get a note from one of our curriculum consultants here in the next day anyway, and you can just reply to that and let them know that you're interested, and they will get you everything you need. So first, I want to thank Barb for taking the time to help us, give us the introduction, and for all your work on getting the new edition done. We're incredibly excited about it. John, thank you. I gave you all of about 7 hours notice that we were doing this today, so thank you so much for taking the time to jump on and talk a bit about Murder at Oldfields. And finally, thank you to those of you who logged in to attend the webinar. Forensics is an incredibly new and exciting and growing course in high school, and we at Kendall Hunt are glad to be part of it, and hope to partner with you moving forward. So with that said, Barb, goodbye, and everyone else, thank you for attending the webinar.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.